I'd been camping alone before, plenty of times. I like the quiet, the self-sufficiency, the sense that I can disappear for a few days and nobody will bother me. That weekend, I picked a national forest that barely showed up on Google Maps. There was no cell signal within 20 kilometers, exactly what I wanted. The first night went fine. I hiked out to a small clearing near a creek, pitched my tent, and got a fire going before dark. When I lay down, the only sounds were water trickling and wind moving through leaves. Sometime in the night, I woke up to silence. Not just quiet, complete silence. The creek wasn't running. The wind wasn't moving. Even the bugs were gone. Then I heard it, a faint metallic click, like a camera shutter or a lighter being flicked. Once. Twice. Then gone. I unzipped the tent a little and peered outside. The fire had burned down to red coals. Everything was dark, too dark. My headlamp beam barely reached the trees. I couldn't see anyone. The next morning, there were boot prints in the damp dirt. Not mine. Heavier tread, pointing toward the tent, then away toward the trees. I told myself maybe it was a ranger, though no ranger would be out there that late. Still, I stayed another night, because what else could I do? I was miles from my car. At dusk, I built a bigger fire. I wanted to make it obvious that someone was here, someone awake. Around midnight, I started hearing that sound again. Click. Pause. Click. I called out, "Who's there?" But nothing answered. Just that single metallic sound moving slowly through the woods. Then a flash. For half a second, the trees lit up white, as if someone had taken a photo. I saw a shape, tall, thin, standing perfectly still. I shouted again. The flash came once more, this time closer. My hands were shaking when I grabbed my flashlight and ran toward the creek. I slipped, got soaked, dropped my light, but when I looked back, I swear I saw someone standing by my fire, holding what looked like an old film camera. I spent the rest of the night crouched behind a fallen log until dawn. When I finally packed up and hiked out, I found something near the trailhead pinned to a tree, a Polaroid photo. My tent. Taken from maybe 20 feet away. On the back, in neat handwriting, were the words, "Beautiful shot. You sleep very still." It started like every camping trip I'd ever done, a couple of brothers, a few beers, and way too much confidence in our wilderness skills. My brother Mark and I hadn't hung out properly in years. He'd gone full tech addict, headphones always in, phone always on. I figured a weekend off-grid might do him good. I found a spot deep in the state forest, a place I'd seen mentioned once in an old camping forum, Ash Hollow. No official sites. No marked trails. Just a narrow dirt path that disappeared into trees so thick it looked like you were walking into another world. We parked, hiked 3 hours, and finally found a clearing big enough for a tent and a fire ring. The air was damp and still. You couldn't even hear wind up there, just the occasional creak of a tree and our boots crushing leaves. The first day went great. We fished in a nearby stream, made a small fire, and cooked instant noodles. I even caught Mark smiling, something I hadn't seen since he was a kid. It was around 9 p.m. when we heard it for the first time. 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate, spaced evenly apart. Talk, talk, talk. We froze. It came from somewhere behind the tent, not far. Mark laughed. Probably a woodpecker. But it wasn't. I've spent enough time outdoors to know that sound. This was rhythmic. Intentional. We waited. A minute later, it came again, 3 knocks, a pause, then 2. Mark called out, "Hello?" No answer. We figured maybe someone else was camping nearby and playing a joke. But when I circled the clearing with a flashlight, there were no other tents, no signs of people, nothing but trees and darkness. By morning, we laughed it off. But I noticed Mark checking the tree line more often. The woods felt different that day, quieter. That night, just after we put the fire out, the knocking started again. Same rhythm. This time, closer. Could be wind knocking a branch, Mark said, though he didn't sound convinced. Branches don't knock twice the same way, I muttered. We sat in silence, listening. The knocks came again. Talk, 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 pause, talk, talk. It was right at the edge of our light now. Hey! I shouted. Who's there? Nothing. We stayed up until 2 a.m., staring into the dark, the fire between us shrinking to embers. Eventually, the knocking stopped. By the third night, we'd agreed we were leaving in the morning. But nature had other plans. A storm rolled in right after sunset. Rain came down in sheets, lightning lighting up the trees in bursts of white. We huddled inside the tent, listening to thunder crack through the valley. And then, beneath the storm, came 3 knocks. Slow, muffled, but unmistakable. Mark's face went pale. That's right next to us. Before I could respond, 3 more, louder this time, on the other side of the tent. Something was walking around us. We heard it circle once, twice. Then, tap, 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 right against the tent pole, barely 2 feet from my face. I yelled, unzipped the flap, and swung the flashlight out, but all I saw were sheets of rain. Nothing moved. Then I noticed our fire. We had put it out earlier, but now it was burning again, a small, steady flame. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Mark. We sat up until dawn, every nerve stretched tight. When light finally came, we packed and left immediately. On the way back, we passed a small ranger station by the main road. I stopped in to report what happened. I don't know what I expected. The ranger, a gray-bearded man, listened quietly while I told the story. When I mentioned the knocks, his eyes changed. You camped near Ash Hollow? He asked. I nodded. He sighed, like he'd heard this before. You're lucky it was just knocks. I frowned. What do you mean? Years back, a miner went missing near that hollow, he said. He used to mark trees by knocking on them with an old pick handle so he wouldn't lose his way. Search teams said they heard him for weeks, even after the trails were clear. Never found his body. Folks who camp there still hear him sometimes, trying to find his way back. I laughed nervously, waiting for him to crack a smile. He didn't. That night, when I finally got home, I was unpacking gear when I noticed something that stopped me cold. One of our tent poles had 3 small dents near the base, like something hard had struck it. Now, sometimes, when I can't sleep and the wind hits the side of my house, I swear I hear it again. Talk, talk, talk. I wasn't supposed to be camping alone. My friend Caleb bailed last minute, said his girlfriend got sick, so I figured, screw it, I'll go anyway. The spot was already paid for, deep in the national forest, no cell service, perfect solitude. I got there late in the afternoon, set up camp beside the tree line. It was colder than I expected, the kind of chill that crawls under your clothes and stays there. As the sun dipped, I started a fire, cracked a beer, and settled into the silence. There's something special about being alone out there. It's peaceful, but there's also this weight to it. The kind that makes every tiny sound feel louder than it should. By the time the fire burned low, the woods were pitch black. I was half dozing in my chair when I heard branches snapping, faint but steady. Probably a deer. That's what I told myself. But the sound didn't fade. It stopped, then came again, closer, deliberate. Footsteps. Hey! I shouted, my voice sharper than I meant. Who's out there? No answer. Just the crack of another branch. I grabbed my flashlight and swept it toward the trees. The beam caught nothing but fog and trunks. I waited a minute, heart thudding, then sat back down. That's when I saw it, movement. Right at the edge of the firelight, maybe 30 feet away. A shape. Not animal. Human. He was standing completely still, just barely visible, like he'd stepped out from between the trees and was watching. I shouted again, "You need something?" The man didn't move. For a second I thought maybe it was a reflection or smoke, but then I saw his hand, pale, hanging limp at his side. The fire popped loudly and the sound made me flinch. When I looked back, the man was gone. I didn't sleep that night. Every time the fire crackled, I spun toward the sound. Every creak of the woods made my pulse jump. By dawn, I convinced myself it had to be another camper, maybe someone lost. I even laughed about it, though it sounded forced. Around noon, I walked down to the trailhead to clear my head. That's when I saw it, another campsite, maybe 200 meters away. It looked abandoned. The tent was collapsed, things scattered. I called out, no answer. Out of curiosity, I peeked inside. The sleeping bag was still zipped, flattened, like someone had just stepped out and never came back. There was a mug on the log, half full of something moldy. Judging by the leaves piled up, it had been there at least a week. I got the hell out of there and went back to my site. That night, I built the fire higher. I didn't want shadows creeping in. Around 10 p.m., I was sitting by the flames when I heard something new, a low humming, barely audible over the fire. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then it grew clearer. A man's voice. Soft. Mumbled. Like someone talking to themselves. Hello? I called out. The voice stopped. Then, from the dark, you shouldn't have come back. My stomach dropped. Who's there? No response. Just that faint humming again, closer now. I aimed my flashlight at the tree line. Nothing. Just trees. Then I saw him again. Same man. Standing just outside the ring of firelight. His clothes looked torn, dirty. He was barefoot. His head tilted slightly, like he was trying to listen. I took a step back. Hey, you okay? Do you need help? He didn't answer. He just said, in this strange, flat tone, don't go in the tent. Then he turned and walked into the dark. I waited, listening to his footsteps fade. I wanted to leave, every instinct told me to, but it was pitch black, and my car was a mile away through thick woods. I sat awake until sunrise, gripping the flashlight until my fingers cramped. When morning finally came, I went straight to my tent to pack. As I lifted my sleeping bag, something caught my footprints. Not mine. They circled the tent. Twice. Bare feet. I turned, scanning the trees, nothing. When I finally made it back to the main road, I stopped at a ranger station. I told them everything, the man, the footprints, the abandoned camp. The ranger listened, nodded, and said, yeah, we've had a few calls like that this month. What do you mean? I asked. He hesitated. That other camp you saw, we found a body there last week. Guy went missing 3 months ago. No shoes, torn clothes. Looked like he'd been wandering around for days before he died. You're sure the man you saw didn't speak much? I nodded slowly. The ranger sighed. Then you probably did see him. That night, back home, I kept thinking about what he said. Don't go in the tent. I hadn't thought much of it then. But now, when I replay that night in my head, the humming, the way he stared, something doesn't sit right. Because when I checked the tent that morning, the zipper had been halfway open. And I don't remember leaving it that way.